Okay, so in this video, we're going to take a look at questions involving relative frequency. So we use relative frequency when we want to estimate probabilities from experimental data, which can be presented in several different ways. So to calculate the relative frequency of a specific event occurring, we simply take the number of successful outcomes and divide this by the total number of trials. It's also worth noting too that the estimate for relative frequency becomes more accurate as the number of trials increases. So let's take a look at a few examples. Okay, for this first question, we have that Daniel plays football for his local team. So far this season, Daniel has scored 22 penalties, but has missed 6 penalties. We need to work out an estimate for the probability that Daniel scores a penalty. So we're actually looking for the relative frequency here. We're going to use the data that's been given, and from this we can estimate a probability for Daniel scoring a penalty. So we can see from the question that Daniel has scored 22 penalties, but he's missed 6 of them. So we can figure out how many penalties he's taken in total by simply adding these two together. That's going to give us a total of 28. So now to find an estimate for the probability that Daniel scores a penalty, all we're going to do is find the relative frequency, which is simply the number of times that Daniel has scored a penalty, which we're told in the question is 22, and we're going to divide this by the total penalties that he's taken, which we've just figured out to be 28. So we've got 22 over 28. We can then simplify this. We want to look for the highest common factor of 22 and 28, which is 2. So that means I can divide the numerator by 2. So if I do 22 divided by 2, that's going to give me 11. And then I can divide the denominator by 2. So 28 divided by 2 is going to give me 14. So our estimated probability that Daniel scores a penalty would be 11 over 14. Okay, for this next question, we have that a biased spinner is spun. The amount of times that the spinner lands on red, blue, green, and yellow is recorded in the frequency table below. We need to work out an estimate for the probability that the spinner lands on green or yellow. So again, for this question, we want to find an estimate for the probability that the spinner lands on green or yellow. We've been given some data for this from a set amount of times that the spinner has been spun, so we can figure out the relative frequency. So the first thing we want to do is figure out how many times a spinner was spun in total. And all we're going to do is simply add all these numbers together. So if we do 15 add 9, that's going to give us 24. Add on 12 gives us 36. Add 4 gives us 40. So this spinner was spun for a total of 40 times. So now we want an estimate for the probability that the spinner lands on green or on yellow. So first of all, we want to figure out how many times the spinner lands on green or yellow. So all we do here is take the amount of times it landed on green, which was 12, and I'm going to add on the amount of times it landed on yellow, which is 4, and then we divide this by the total number of times the spinner was spun, which you've just figured out to be 40. So we can simplify the numerator. If we do 12 add 4, that's going to give us 16. So that gives us 16 over 40, which then we can simplify. We want to look for the highest common factor of 16 and 40, which is 8. That means I can divide the numerator by 8. So if I do 16 divided by 8, that's going to give me 2. But then I've also got to do the same to the bottom. So if I do 40 divided by 8, that's going to give me 5. So for our relative frequency, which is the estimated probability that the spinner lands on green or yellow, we've got 2/5. And that'd be our answer for that one. Okay, and for this final question, we have that an egg farm weighed a sample of 50 eggs. It recorded the results in the frequency table below. Emma buys some eggs and picks one at random. Estimate the probability that this egg weighs 50 grams or more. So to begin with, we want to take a look at the sample of eggs from the egg farm. And we want to identify in their sample how many eggs weighed 50 grams or more. So we can see in the first interval, these eggs weighed from 30 grams all the way up to, but not including 40 grams. So we're not going to include those eggs. The next interval were from 40 grams all the way up to, but not included 50. So we're not going to include that interval. From the third interval, These included all the eggs that weighed 50 grams all the way up to, but not including, 60 grams. So we're going to include this interval, so we're going to include these 9 eggs. And then the final interval were eggs weighing from 60 grams all the way up to, but not including, 70 grams. So we're going to include these 3 eggs here as well. So we need to find our relative frequency, which is our estimated probability that the eggs weigh 50 grams or more. So to do this, we're going to take the number of eggs in the sample that weighed 50 grams or more, which we can figure out by adding those 2 values together. If we do 9, add 3, that's going to give us 12. So there were 12 eggs that weighed 50 grams or more, and we're simply going to put that over the total, which we're told in the question was 50 eggs. But if we weren't given that, we could also add up all the frequencies too. So our relative frequency, or estimated probability, that the egg that Emma picks at random weighs 50 grams or more would be 12 over 50. But again, we can simplify this. We're looking for the highest common factor of 12 and 50, which is actually 2. So if I divide the numerator by 2, that's going to give me 6. And if I divide the denominator by 2, that's going to give me 25. So again, the estimated probability that Emma picks an egg that weighs 50 grams or more is 6/25. So well done if you followed along with those examples. And that's it for this video. If you want to check out any more videos on working with probability, then I'll leave some links to them down in the description, and I'll also put a card in the top corner, so feel free to check them out. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing. If there are any topics at all that you'd like me to go through next, then please just let me know down in the comments, and I'll try to make some videos on those topics as soon as possible. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.